السلام عليكم ورحمة الله. الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على أشرف المرسلين نبينا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. Welcome to another episode of the call of Ibrahim alayhi salam, talking about the manasik and the rituals of Hajj from the book of At-Tahqiq wal-Idah by Sheikh Abdul Aziz bin Baz rahimahullah, and going through one chapter after the other, and we're towards the end and some of the rulings and etiquettes when visiting Al-Madinah and the Masjid of the Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam. And the last thing we talked about is visiting the grave of the Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam after making salah in the Masjid. And the Sheikh, he says afterwards that this ziyarah to the grave of the Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam after going to the Masjid and making salah, this is for men, and as for women, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala forbade for the women to visit the graves, according to the opinion that the Sheikh takes as the correct opinion. And quoting the hadith of the Prophet عليه الصلاة والسلام أنه لعن زوارات القبور من النساء والمتخذين عليها المساجد والسرج, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala curses the women, those who frequently visit the graves, and those who would take masajid or build masajid on top of the graves. So this is with regards to the grave. And then going to or being in Medina to make salah in the Masjid of the Prophet عليه الصلاة والسلام, and to make dua to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, which is the same for all the masajid, and as we heard, it's more virtue, with 100 or with 1,000 times more the rewards of the salah in the Masjid of the Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam, more than any other masjid except al-Masjid al-Haram, 100,000 salah more in rewards. It's recommended for the one that visits the Masjid of the Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam that he prays the 5 daily prayers, and to make dhikr, to make salat al-nafila, optional salah, as much as a person can, whether it's in the Rawdah if it's permitted or any other place, and to be in the first row if a person can, and he mentioned some of the rewards mentioned with regards to the first row, to come early to the masjid. If people know what's in calling the adhan of rewards and the first row, they would not find anything except to draw lots to win such a position, they would do so. And the Prophet ﷺ warned his ummah from frequently going late for the salah, where the Prophet ﷺ, he said, تَقَدَّمُوا فَأْتَمُّوا بِي وَلْيَأْتَمَّ بِكُم مِّن بَعْدَكُمْ, that come forward and follow me, and let those who come after you follows you. And then he said, وَلَا يَزَالُ الرَّجُلُ يَتَأَخَّرُ عَنِ الصَّلَاةِ حَتَّى يُؤَخِّرَهُ اللَّهُ, the man will keep on being late going to the salah till Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will always make him late for what is benefiting for himself. So this is even some of the narrations, still Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala make him late, meaning into the fire, as he mentions. And the importance of making the row straight in the salah, like the angels they do with the Lord, all of these ahadith he mentions them. And this is in the Masjid of the Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam and all of the masajid. And to be in the right, if a person is able to, the right side of the row or any other place, and whether it's in the Rawdah or other than the Rawdah, to basically exalt the commands of Allah and to do the best in competing with one another to do more and more of the virtuous deeds. He says it's not permissible for anyone to wipe the room of the Prophet ﷺ with their hands, or to kiss it, or to wipe it with their hands and kiss their hands, or to make tawaf around it. All of that is bid'ah, innovations in the deen. None of the early generations of Islam did such a thing, and it's not justified that a person have the love to the Prophet ﷺ. That's why he does this. The Sahaba radiallahu anhum, they loved the Prophet ﷺ more than anyone, and they did not do these types of things. Also, it is not permissible for anyone to ask directly the Prophet ﷺ for anything, matters of dunya, cure of a sick person. All of that is to be asked only from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And as that, even from the Prophet ﷺ, this is associating partners with Allah and worshipping other than Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. We worship Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala alone. We follow the Prophet ﷺ, and the deen of Islam is established on 2 clear pillars. The first one, that we only worship Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala alone, and we do not worship Allah except through the way of Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wasallam. How exclusive the matter is. This deen is deen tawheed, the tawheed of worship, the oneness of worship, and the oneness of following the Messenger sallallahu alayhi wasallam. Of course, that by following the people of knowledge. This is the meaning of La ilaha illallah Muhammadur Rasulullah. Therefore, it is not permissible for anyone to ask from the Messenger sallallahu alayhi wasallam, even to ask him ash-shafa'ah, to ask for intercession from him, because it's owned by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. قُلْ لِلَّهِ شَفَاعَةُ جَمِيعًا. Say, O Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala belong all of the shafa'ah. And if a person make dua to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for the shafa'ah, then it's fine. To say, Allahumma shaffi' fiyya nabiyyik. Or Allah, make my prophet intercede for me. That's fine. You're asking Allah. But you don't ask the Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam, you don't ask anyone for this. As he mentioned, the like of this. So, but as far as those who died, we do not ask anything from them. And as the Prophet ﷺ, he said, if the son of Adam died, his deeds will be terminated except صدقة جارية, continuous charity, أو علم ينتفع به, knowledge that is benefiting after him, or ولد صالح, a righteous son or daughter that would make dua to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for them. And during the lifetime of the Prophet ﷺ, it was permissible, because the Prophet ﷺ is able to do so, and he would ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But after the Prophet ﷺ departed from this life, the Prophet ﷺ, he lives a more perfect life after this life, but not this worldly life that we live, which is a major thing. Many Muslims, they claim, without any evidence whatsoever, that the Prophet ﷺ is alive today the same way that we are living in this life, and they even claim that they speak to him and so on, opening gates of deviation. The Prophet ﷺ, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala clearly stated in the Quran, saying, إِنَّكَ مَيِّتٌ وَإِنَّهُمْ مَيِّتُونَ. You will die and they will die. But the Prophet ﷺ, his life in al-barzakh, in the transition state, is more perfect than the life of this world. So this is something that is very clear. And therefore people, they should not transgress the limits, and that's what the Sheikh rahimahullah, he says, in which asking those who deceased for intercession, this is something that is clearly not permissible whatsoever. And the Prophet ﷺ, as he said, he is living a more perfect life, more perfect than the life of the martyrs even, but this is in the barzakh, not the same life or the worldly life that we live in it. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala knows best the essence of this. And as we heard in the hadith, when someone says salam to the Prophet ﷺ, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala would give him his soul and he would reply to this salam. So it shows that the Prophet ﷺ had died in this world, from this world, and he's living a most perfect life, as we heard. The reason why he extensively talked about this issue, because it's needed, as he says, and because of many people that are confused in this matter, and it calls people to fall into the shirk and worshipping the dead, and they don't stop by the Prophet ﷺ, they take this to the awliya and the people, righteous ones and things like this, which is all means of shirk wal-'iyadhu billah. Also, as he says, some of the people, when they come to the masjid of the Prophet ﷺ, they raise their voice by the grave of the Prophet ﷺ, or they stand long there, which is all not something to be done, and it's not permissible. And the Prophet ﷺ warned his ummah, even Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in the Quran, from raising their voice over the voice of the Prophet ﷺ and in the houses of Allah. So this is something that is especially in the masjid of the Prophet ﷺ, since the believers were forbidden to raise their voice over the voice of the Prophet ﷺ. So the same thing, something like that, to be observed in the masjid of the Prophet ﷺ. And also standing for a long time in front of the grave of the Prophet ﷺ, and making lots of salam cause people to be crowded and inconvenience for everyone. And again, doing something that is not part of the deen of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and to respect and to honor the Prophet ﷺ is to follow what the Prophet ﷺ commanded us. The same thing, as he says, some of the people, those who visit, they would make sure that they would make dua by the grave of the Prophet ﷺ, and they would face the grave and raise their hands and make dua. All of that is against what the Sahaba radiallahu anhum, what the early generations of Islam, they did. And this is from the innovations that got introduced. And the Prophet ﷺ said, عليكم بسنتي وسنة الخلفاء الراشدين المهديين من بعدي تمسكوا بها وعضوا عليها بالنواجذ. Be upon my way and the way of the rightly guided Khalifa after me. Hold fast to it, bite on it with your molar teeth, and be warned against the newly introduced matters, because indeed every new invented matters is bid'ah, innovation, and every innovation in the deen is an astray, is a deviation. Whoever introduce anything in this matters of us, which is this deen of al-Islam, which is not part of it, it's going to be rejected. Ali ibn al-Hussein, Zayn al-Abidin radiallahu anhuma, he saw a man making dua by the grave of the Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam, making dua to Allah by the grave of the Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam. He forbade him of this. He said, should I inform you a hadith that I heard it from my father, and my father heard it from my grandfather, which is from the Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam. He says, لا تتخذوا قبري عيدا ولا بيوتكم قبورا. Do not take my grave as a place of festivity that you keep on coming to it and so on. And do not take your homes as graveyards. And say salah, وصلوا علي, send you salah. Make salah on the Prophet ﷺ, because your taslim, your salam and your salah would reach me wherever you are. That's why people, when they say salam to the Prophet ﷺ on my behalf, it reaches if you would make that salam to the Prophet ﷺ. So when people, some of them, they put their right on their left on their chest like this, as if they're making salah, while they're standing in front of the grave of the Prophet ﷺ, or they do certain positions as if they're standing in front of a king or so. It's like as if they're making ibadah, which is something that is not permissible whatsoever. And he quoted that something like that by Ibn Hajar rahimahullah. He mentioned this, and it's very clear. But for those who follow their desires and blindly follow and things like this is something that we can ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for their guidance. So this is again facing the grave from a distance. Even some people, they do that, or moving their lips with a salam or dua, or they stand looking at the grave from a distance. All of that is from the bid'ah, from the innovations of the deen. And as a rule, the end of this ummah, the last part of this ummah, would never be rectified, as Imam Malik rahimahullah and others, they said, unless they follow what the earlier generations of Islam they were upon, and they were following the way of the Prophet ﷺ and his Khulafa al-Rashidin. We'll stop here inshallah ta'ala, and next time we'll talk about what's left in the last portion of the book with regards to the ziyarah or visiting the masjid of the Prophet ﷺ. وصلى الله وسلم وبارك على محمد وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم. والسلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته.